Hey everyone, this is Mike. Today I'm going to be talking about the upcoming Monk changes in patch 5.4. The reason why I'm making this video right now and not when patch 5.4 comes out is because when 5.4 comes out I'm going to be very busy raiding, also making the raid videos and that kind of stuff. So I won't have until probably a week or a little bit longer after 5.4 comes out to actually make the Monk video, as I also want to get my hands on, get some practice in and actually have a good understanding of how Monk works in 5.4. However, if you weren't able to catch the live letter, I still wanted to give you a little overview of some of the changes that they have talked about so that you have an idea of what is going to happen with Monk in 5.4 in case you didn't see the live letter. So just going to talk about the changes, how it's changed from what it is right now into what it is going to be. And I'm also going to talk about one thing that I would have personally liked to see changed that they actually did not change, or at least they didn't from the looks of it. Of course, these are still technically tentative, as until the patch notes comes out, we won't actually know these specific changes, so to speak, so anything can still change at this point. So first of all, let's start off with our Greased Lightning. This one is completely going to be changed, as this gauge over here is going to be gone and it'll become a trait, meaning you don't have to keep up your Greased Lightning stacks anymore. Monk is just going to be a very fast job right out of the gate, no stacks needed to be maintained. They also made it so that Greased Lightning is only going to give you an attack speed steroid and not a damage buff anymore, but they are going to be adjusting the potencies of your abilities to make it so that you're still going to be doing the same damage essentially. That does mean that your fist buffs over here are going to be changed, because right now if you're in Fist of Fire you have your 10% damage buff, which is what we would always be using, but of course in Stormblood we got a 4th Greased Lightning stack when we're in Fist of Wind, which meant that we would always be using Fist of Wind. But because Greased Lightning is gone, we are going to go back to Fist of Fire, as that is basically going to give us the most damage output for like all of the 3 fist buffs that we have. Then moving over to Tornado Kick, this one is becoming a 45-second off global cooldown. At first I was expecting it to be kind of like the new Greased Lightning spender, like kind of how if it's Samurai, every time you use an AI Jutsu you gain a diamond on this gauge once you have 3 stacks. You can use Shoha. I was expecting it to be the same, that every time you use a Coral Stance ability you got a stack of Tornado Kick gauge, and then when it was full you could use Tornado Kick. Not the case. There's gonna be a 45-second cooldown. This means that you'll be able to use it during all of your buff windows, as your buff window or your Monk rotation is 90 seconds. 45 times 2 is 90. 45 seconds is a bit of a weird cooldown though, because it means that it won't line up with your 1 minute and your 2 minute buffs, but at least it'll still be there for your 90 seconds for your personal rotation, and then for the 3 minutes and the 6 minutes when it comes down to the raid buffs. Moving over to Form Shift, this one has gotten a really cool change, because this is basically becoming a GCD perfect balance. So what Form Shift does right now is every time you press it, you can see it over here on the top left, made my buff bar a bit bigger. We are basically going to be rotating through our different stances every time that we press Form Shift. This was really good right now because you can go from a Coral Stance into Oppo Oppo again, and that would mean that you would refresh your Greased Lightning. Again, Greased Lightning is gone, so we don't need that anymore. So what they're going to do instead is when you use Form Shift, your buff, you're going to be getting a new buff called Form Shift that will last for 15 seconds, and during this buff you can execute any of your GCDs whilst getting the stance bonus. So basically a perfect balance that is now on a GCD and has only got 1 stack, so to speak. Really good change, because this means that when you have downtime and you want to, for example, start off by refreshing your Twin Snakes when the boss comes back or something like that, you just Form Shift once, and then when the boss is back you can just immediately use your Twin Snakes or reapply your Demolish if, for example, you need to step away from the boss for a GCD or 2. You can do that kind of stuff. Really cool change over there. When it comes down to pulling a boss, it's also going to be really great, because all you need to do then is meditate, Form Shift once, and now you're ready to pull the boss, whereas before you would need to Form Shift twice more, and they basically just need some extra time when the next raid tier comes out. It's gonna be nice because you can just chain pull a whole lot quicker without you feeling gimped all that much. Moving over to Six-Sided Star. This one is a bit of a weird change, but I don't mind it as much. Basically what's gonna happen is you still get the slow GCD, so when you use it, as you can see, the GCD recast timer is incredibly slow. But what is going to happen now is you are going to be getting a movement speed buff. It felt, or at least from what I've seen on the stream, it looks a lot like sprint speed. So with sprint you're of course very fast. It seems that when you use Six-Sided Star, you're basically getting a free sprint whilst you use it. So this will kind of be to greet that extra GCD before you run away from the boss. Still, it doesn't allow you to use any other GCDs, like of course as you can see everything goes on cooldown. If I had my meditate up, I'm just quickly going to use Forbidden Chakra. As you can see, meditate is also ticking down on the cooldown, so you can't use that either. But of course, because you don't need to form shift constantly anymore whilst you're in downtime to get back to your like Quarrel stance, to get your Greased Lightning back, or to keep your Greased Lightning going, is kind of alright in my opinion. Again, I will have to play around with it a little bit to actually see how much I like it, because you still can't meditate, so these two still contradict each other during downtime, and now that you don't need this anymore to keep your Greased Lightning alive, I'm not quite sure how useful this is going to be. When it comes down to Anatman, they didn't actually show us anything about Anatman. We don't know what this is going to be, so we'll have to wait until the patch notes goes live so that we actually know what this is going to turn into. So far I've heard some speculation about like a chakra generation system or something, but of course that is all speculation, so I'm not gonna touch upon that in this video. Then perfect balance. This is probably the coolest change of all, and to basically showcase this I'm gonna move over to my ninja in just a second. But right now the way perfect balance works is you press it and you have 10 seconds where you can execute your GCD in any form. What this is used for right now is to alternate boot shine and dragon kicks whilst you're inside Riddle of Fire and Brotherhood. Maybe not inside the opener, because for the opener you could still use perfect balance right now to get your Greased Lightning very quickly. Because Greased Lightning is not going to be a thing anymore, you can use this during the opener as well. Right now you can of course use Anatman instead of perfect balance and then still do it, but I feel like Anatman just feels so incredibly bad right now. So still curious to see what this is going to turn into. But the way Greased Lightning is going to work in 5.4 is they're going to extend the duration by 5 seconds, so it's going to become 15 seconds. And then they're also going to be giving it 6 stacks, and each time you're executing a GCD, it's going to eat one of those stacks. So to showcase basically what this is going to mean, I'm going to quickly get 50 gauge on my ninja and use Bunshin. Now Bunshin lasts for 30 seconds and it has 5 stacks, as you can see over here on my buff bar. Now every time that I use a GCD, as you can see, it is going to eat one of those stacks. And this is basically how perfect balance is gonna work. Every time you execute a GCD underneath perfect balance, it's gonna eat 1 stack, and if you have to move away from the boss for a second, it won't be as punishing as before, because you now have that 5 seconds extra grace period essentially, compared to what you have right now. Because right now perfect balance, if I go back, I'm pretty sure it's on cooldown, yeah it is. Like right now, it is very tight to get all of those 6 GCDs underneath this 10-second duration. You have to use it in the second half of your off-global cooldown window. You can't have any disengages. You also can't really be lagging because you have a little bit too much of lag. You might not get that final GCD under there, meaning you only get 5 GCDs, which could be quite a DPS loss. So this is a really cool change basically. So I'm quite a big fan of that one. Now when it comes down to some other changes that I would have personally liked to have seen, the biggest one would be Twin Snakes. They didn't touch upon this one. From the video that we have seen, it looks to be that we basically our Greased Lightning trade is gonna be Greased Lightning 4, so I'm just very quickly gonna get my Greased Lightning up. And I'm also gonna showcase why I personally would have liked to see a Twin Snake change. And this is also one of the reasons why I made this very big gauge over here. And that is because of the twin through twin rotation. So right now, when I go and apply my Twin Snakes, rotation is basically going to look a bit like this. So we alternate our Twin Snakes with 2 True Strikes before we go and apply our Twin Snakes again. Now this means that we are going to be rotating between the back and the flank of the boss quite a bit, which I personally don't mind because I do quite enjoy this playstyle. But the problem is that your Twin Snakes, when you reapply it, is not going to have the buff active. And you're also going to have one off-global cooldown window where you don't have your Twin Snakes active. So as you can see right here, Twin Snakes is gonna run out right as I place my Demolish, oh not Demolish, my my Dragon Kick. And it makes it just basically feel very awkward to use. I did drop my Demolish there, but I'm also paying attention to speaking right now. But basically it feels a bit like wrong, so to speak. Like again over here, I still have my Twin Snakes active for that 1 GCD, even though it drops. It technically still counts as being active because server ticks and whatnot. But it just feels very wrong. Personally, I don't necessarily mind that the twin through twin rotation is a thing, because it does make Monk a whole lot more active between moving in between the flank and the back, and I do quite enjoy that, seeing how like Monk is more of a GCD focused job right now. but it still feels very weird. The alternative rotation to this basically would be like this, where you just go Dragon Kick Twin Snakes and then have the random one, and then you would do your Bootshine True Strike over here, and then again random on the third hit if you have to refresh Demolish or not, and then you would refresh Dragon Kick Twin Snakes again over here. Right now this is technically a damage loss because it is better to get that second True Strike in there and then have that one off global cooldown window where you don't have Twin Snakes, and then refreshing Twin Snakes without the buff active. It is a potency gain to do that, but it just feels a little bit wrong. So I would have loved to see Twin Snakes get a 2-second duration buff or a 2-second duration cut. That way we know that we either need to do Twin through Twin or that we need to do Twin through True Twin, which is the Fist of Wind rotation at the moment with Greased Lightning 4. So it still feels a little bit weird to me. That is the biggest change that I would have personally liked to see change, as it is such an important thing about the actual rotation itself, but they didn't do that. Everything else that they changed, like all great quality of life changes so far. Still very curious to see what Anatman is going to be, but I'm kind of sad that they didn't change anything about Twin Snakes, because it is still going to feel a little bit awkward. When it comes down to Monk optimization, it is still going to be a difficult job. Yes, they've made the job a little bit easier, like for example with Perfect Balance, even though I feel like Perfect Balance is more of a latency fix as well, because if you had high latency, you just wouldn't be able to get 6 GCDs under that most of the time. Now you will be able to do that, so it's a little bit of a fix in that way. But the other changes are mostly just like, for example, Tornado Kick, making it usable. Form Shift is just a really nice change. 6-sided Star, I don't really care too much for this change, but it is quite nice. Anatman, again, we'll have to wait on that. But it didn't actually make Monk super simple, so to speak. Yes, Greased Lightning being gone makes it a little bit easier because you don't have to manage your stacks anymore, but it doesn't make Monk a whole lot easier because Twin through Twin is still a thing, and you'll still have to think about where you can and can't use it depending on where your downtime is going to be. But that's gonna do it for this video. Once 5.4 comes out, I get the time to play around with the changes, and of course, if there were any more changes coming, like for example when we know what Anatman is, and maybe in the patch notes they might change Twin Snakes, who knows, could always happen because these changes are still tentative technically, even though the patch is coming out in 1.5 weeks, but still they could still tweak some things here or there. But those are kind of like the changes that are coming. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of these changes so far, and then once I get the time to play around with Monk a bit in 5.4, you'll definitely see a follow-up video to that. But that's gonna be it for me. I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank my Patreons for supporting me, and I'll see you in the next one.